The intimacy in my guest Janel's marriage was gone, but she took some highly unusual steps to get it back, and they worked. She describes what she did and said exactly, and still does every day, that makes her husband want to treat her like the queen. Janel, welcome to the Empowered Wife podcast. Thank you so much. I'm so excited you're here.
Thank you, Laura. I'm so excited to be here.
What was going on in those bad old days in your marriage?
Well, I feel like before I can go back to the bad old days, I have to go back to the good old days. And that goes all the way back to when we met. It was just that initial love at first sight, romantic, everything I'd always dreamed about. It was just instantaneous and things were just amazing. Our chemistry, we got along so well. We had so much in common. We both came from very similar backgrounds. I grew up in a very strict Baptist home. He grew up in a very strict missionary home. So we both could really connect on that level. Both of our dads were in the Air Force. It was just kind of like this perfect union. And as we continued to date, everything was just what I'd always dreamed of. He was so romantic. He cherished me and adored me, and he took such good care of me. And then his mother came along. I met his mom, and she did not really approve of me. I think it was more she didn't approve of him getting married at any point. She was very controlling. And so she controlled a lot of our dating, our engagement, all the way up until the wedding. She kind of controlled everything. And it kind of was a constant battle between my husband and I. And when the actual wedding happened, she had such poor behavior that it ruined the day for me. So we had newlywed days with this very, upsetting situation where I was just devastated. This was the day I dreamed of my whole life. And she had said some awful things about me, and it was just very hurt. And I just kind of took it out on my husband and kind of became controlling myself. I think when you are controlled, the result is to control the people around you. So I wanted to control his relationship with his mom. I didn't want him to talk to her once we got married. I just kind of became something that I wasn't proud of. And in those early newlywed days, you think it's going to be all bliss, and it wasn't. At that point, my husband had just graduated from police academy. So he was just starting with a new law enforcement job. We had mother-in-law issues. We were only 21 and 22. So we were just young and dumb. We didn't really know what we were doing. So we were really struggling in those early days. He was very extroverted and social. I was very introverted. So we would argue over whether we would go out with friends or whether we would stay home. And he told me at one point, I was excited to get married to get away from my mom. And now I feel like I'm married to her because of my controlling tendencies. We had a lot kind of dumped on us right at that beginning stage in our marriage. And so the other thing that kind of really was a tough situation for me was when we got married, we didn't live together until we got married. And so I just thought intimacy would be something that came very easily for us. And he had a very low drive and very low, which we found out later, testosterone levels, which affected a lot. So I'm thinking, he doesn't love me. He's not attracted to me. I'm not pretty enough. I'm not good enough. So I made it all about me. And I wasn't very dignified in how I treated him about that situation. So he knew I wasn't very respectful of him during that situation. And so we were fighting over everything. We didn't see each other very much. And so it was just kind of this constant snowball that just kept accumulating. And so I thought, well, maybe if we get out of this area, we get kind of farther away from his family and his mom, and let's move to the beach town where we got married or where we honeymooned. Maybe it'll be a nice change. And I thought it would go better, and it didn't. So then we stayed there for a while and thought, well, what if we move back home to where I'm from, which is several states away? I was feeling isolated, like I needed my family. And so when we moved back home, he took up quite a few new hobbies that were kind of that went along with where we lived, hunting and softball and all of these things. And I continued to get more resentful. I felt like he didn't really want to spend time with me. He was too busy with his hobbies. And, meanwhile, he's not feeling loved or respected or appreciated in a lot of different ways. And so he's continually pulling away from me. So it was just kind of like this, it just continued to get worse. And then the intimacy was not good. So I'm feeling all the time like there's got to be more to life than this. This is just not what I expected. And around that time, I found out I was pregnant with our son. He was offered a new job, which was kind of like the best law enforcement job in the area. And he was so excited about it. And instead of me being supportive, I was the Debbie Downer. And I was not happy about it because it would be a lot of time away from his family. It would be a really strenuous schedule. And I wasn't sure if that's what was best for our family with having a young son. So he did not feel very excited because here I am, I should be proud and happy and supportive, and I wasn't. So that added even more, strain to our marriage. And then my son was born, and after my son was born, I had a very traumatic labor and delivery and recovery. And so I was really struggling with postpartum, with him being gone long hours, and then he was really, the few minutes he had a month, he was doing hobby. So I'm feeling even more neglected, and I couldn't figure out why would he not want to be here, with his family, and I'm struggling. And it just continues the resentment in me continues to grow. And I felt like, where is this man? He's got to be a stranger to me. I thought I married this man that was so cherishing of me. He adored me. He treated me like a queen. I felt like a Disney princess when I met him. And now I'm feeling the complete opposite, and it's like things just kept getting worse. I found out I was pregnant with my daughter, so that brought on a lot more nervousness and stress because I was afraid of another rough labor and delivery. And he's kind of working towards this really good light at the end of the tunnel, which would have been working a different position in this department where he'd have better hours. But instead of that happening, he found out that everyone in the department was corrupt except for him and another officer. So during this time, he's extremely stressed. These other officers are like committing felonies, and it's all in the news, and it's this big deal. And I should be his support and his, and all I did was say, I told you should not come to this job. I told you should have stayed where you were. And so he, instead of having me in his corner, he's feeling like, he has no support. So it was just a lot all at once. He ended up leaving that job to take another position that he thought was going to be better. And it ended up that this person was also not the best person. And he pretty much lost his job within a year. We had no income, no insurance, nothing. And it was a very dark time in our life. We had just gone through all of that job stress and everything. And I was not being very supportive of him. I'm not taking care of myself at all. I just have, 2 under 2, and I'm trying to just keep the house and everything running here. And he's trying to, figure out what we're going to do. So it was just, I feel like he took that other job kind of to appease me because he knew it would be a better schedule. And then it ended up blowing up in his face again. So it was just a really rough, probably 6 or 7 years. And during this time, I noticed that he was just kind of retreating more. He was on his phone more. He was just not very engaged with me. And I know he was in a really dark place because, he had left the job that he loved for all those years and the line of work that he loved to take a new job that didn't go well. Now he has no job and he just feels like a failure. And all those times that I would go to him and say, I don't really feel loved. I don't feel like you cherish me or you care about me. He would break down and start crying. And I remember thinking, here's this big, strong man, in law enforcement on the SWAT team, and he's crying. Why is he crying? Like, I'm the one that's in pain. He's abandoning me here. He doesn't care about me. And he would tell me, I just don't feel like you appreciate me. I just don't feel like you respect me. And that hit really hard. But I remember thinking, I still made it all about me. It's like, well, he's not intimate with me. He doesn't care about me. And the whole time he was his heart message was, I'm working so hard to provide for you. I'm trying to help. And I just wasn't seeing it. I just felt like he didn't care about me. So, I ended up finding some things on his phone that really upset me. And when I confronted him about it, he lied to me about it. And that upset me even more, which looking back, I know that he lied because he didn't feel safe to tell me, because I wouldn't have been dignified. And I was not dignified when he told me. I definitely did not. I am not proud of how I reacted to all of that. And so we were just in a dark place, all of these things compounding. And then I find this, just inappropriate things that really upset me. And so I think around this time, he realized, he had kind of gotten away from the Lord, and he decided to kind of we were getting back in church, getting plugged in. And that was, we were starting to things were going better. And it took him 3 years to get a full-time job, and he ended up becoming a police chief. So it was like really crazy the way everything worked out. But during this time was kind of a rebuilding time. We're just trying to, gain our footing again. We have 2 little ones. And then, around our 10-year anniversary, we decided we wanted to renew our vows. So we did that. And it was just kind of like, we made it through this really dark time, and we had our kids there with us, and it was just this really special day. We went back to where we got engaged and then married, and that's where we did our vow renewal, and it was so special. And then, I felt like things were kind of getting better, but it wasn't where I wanted it to be. So then one day I stumbled on your podcast. Someone on social media had shared it, and I decided I've never listened to a podcast in my life. I didn't think I could sit still through one. So I figured, but this one sounded really intriguing. So I started listening. I was so fascinated and intrigued, and was inspired by these amazing testimonies of these women who had gone through much worse than I had with my husband. And they were thriving and feeling like they were, newlyweds again. So I remember thinking, like, I need to get this book. So I ordered The Surrendered Life, and I flew through it, and I was just so inspired. I remember sitting there thinking, it's in the Bible, we need to be submissive and respectful, but it doesn't give us a game plan. We don't know what that looks like. So seeing your skills and seeing exactly what they look like and how easy it is once you see it, it's a game plan. And that felt so easy to me compared to all this feeling like I was depending on him to make the first move. Now I had something I could work on. And so it was but it was also foreign to me. I grew up in a home where my mom was not respectful. She was the only person I really had that model to me. And anytime she didn't get her way, she would just do the silent treatment and be manipulative. And then there would be a Cold War, and that's exactly what I would do. And then my husband would not speak to me, and we would go to bed, and I would cry every night and feel so alone. How can my husband be laying here and I feel single? Every night I would cry. He doesn't care about me. He doesn't love me. He doesn't want to be here. So it was just, I wanted more than that. So I wanted more than what I had seen in my family. And so I really dove into the skills. And the first one that I started with was self-care. That was something that was so foreign to me. I never took care of myself, especially when my kids were in those little years. It was survival. And I kind of wore that like a badge, like I'm doing all the things. I don't have time for myself. You have time for hobbies. I don't. And he would tell me, he was so good. He would tell me, anytime you want to go out with your girlfriends and you want to take up a hobby, please do it. I'll be here. I'll take care of everything. And I didn't really want to do a hobby. I just wanted to be in my misery, I guess. And so once I realized what self-care was, that maybe mine just looks a little different than other people. So for me, I'm an introvert. It's more staying home and just having time to myself or listening to your podcast. And I remembered one day I just decided I'm going to start putting music on the shower. I have to do, self-care anyway. I might as well enjoy it. And I was singing and having a great time. And I think my husband was pretty confused when he saw me. I got out of the shower and I was happy and I was a different person. It was just little things like that that I started doing. And so that was around like the 14-year mark of our marriage, which is about 2 years ago. So I've been kind of, building on that. And most recently I joined a book club, which my husband is so proud of me because he knows that's really me going out on a limb because I'm so, introverted. So he's just so happy to see me doing things that I enjoy again. But one of the first things I did was I'm sorry for being disrespectful. I texted this big long text and I did all the things. I went way back. I'm sorry for being disrespectful about how I treated your relationship with your mom, about not being, thankful about how hard you've worked all these years and the hours you've spent away and all the time you've put in. And so I wasn't sure what to expect in return. And he texted me back, and instead of saying, it's about time, or, he could have said anything. He responded with, thank you, and I'm sorry for not being as good of a husband as I should have been.
Oh,
So it was just not what I was expecting.
so sweet, right? It was vulnerable of you to text that, right? It was a little scary, it sounds like, because he could have said, like, yeah, it's about time. Yeah, you sure were, right? But he didn't. It created a culture where you were both apologizing to each other. So sweet.
Yeah. And it's something that I do almost weekly. You slip up and I'll say I'm sorry for being disrespectful and it's something that would have been a cold war for a week is literally a 10-second, he'll tease me about it and then laugh and then we move on. It's so easy now. Everything is so easy. We get along so well. And those early days, I put the duct tape on and I had never done that before. I felt like he needed to know every thought and my opinion and how I felt about everything. And so I use duct tape a lot. And I also use whatever you think, probably at least 3 to 5 times a day. Because if it's what should I wear? Where do you want to eat? What should we do about this big life decision or a small life decision? Whatever you think. And it's so freeing to not have to get an opinion about everything and what I think for him to handle it. And he does. And it's so nice not to be in control anymore. He's taken control in so many ways and taken so much off my plate by me not being controlling.
Oh, I love that. I mean, it can be a little scary to say whatever you think, right? When it's a big life decision. So do you still feel some fear come up when you're deferring to his thinking?
I don't think I do because I've just seen every time it's worked. I remember one time after he had gotten off the SWAT team, I was really nervous. He had been on the SWAT team for a long time and we have, young kids and they said, it's time for, the younger guys to do that. You've done your time kind of thing. Well, that was when I wasn't in my skills. So after several years, he decided on his own he wanted to retire. And so it was a big piece, missing for him. That was something he had done for a long time. And so after he'd been off for a while, he came to me and said, they've offered me a position as a hostage negotiator. And I thought, well, that's more time, taking things off our plate. But I didn't say anything. I just said, whatever you think, and I think you would do great at it. But deep down, I didn't want him to do it. So I let it go. And after a few days, he came back to me on his own and said, I spoke with him today and told him, I don't really want to do that. I'm trying to take things off my plate. I don't need to add anything else to it. So for me, it was like, I didn't even have to do anything. He figured it out. He decided what he wanted to do. And it ends up aligning with my desires also because he wants me to be happy. He wants our family to be together and to spend time together. And it's so different now. I can't even explain.
Yeah, and he's more motivated and interested to spend time with you and with your family. It sounds like So what a beautiful example of you really trusting him and then getting such a great outcome from it. So I love it. So that could have been scary too, though, to think, well, he's going to be a hostage negotiator now. I don't want that at all. But you were willing to, you trusted. You chose your faith over your fear. Great job, Janelle. I love it. So, go ahead.
I love using the I would love statement. I, for all those years was, you don't spend enough time with the family. I don't get to see you. So now to flip it over and say, I would love to spend more time as a family. I would love to see you. It has changed everything. Now I don't even have to, sometimes I don't even have to even say I would love. He just reads my mind and does things.
Just an irresistible magnet.
I really is. And it's so funny because to feel so like he was repulsed almost by me because I was so unlovable. He would get home from work and I was upset because he'd been gone a long time and I hadn't heard from him and I had 2 little ones and I'm just wearing his clothes pretty much and I'm just looking a mess and I don't think I would want to come home to that either. And it's like now, I'm showing up in such a different way that he wants to be around me all the time. Before he would choose his hobbies 100% over me. Now he's so balanced with his hobbies that if he is doing a hobby, I'll get a text. I wish I just would have stayed home and hung out with you. I really miss you. And it's like, I never thought ever in a million years he would choose spending time with me over his most favorite passions in life.
So sweet. That must feel amazing to feel so desired.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I love it.
I was having just a really rough day. I homeschool my kids and we'd had a rough day and he kind of could sense that I was struggling and he just decided he had extra comp time at work. He was going to take a day off. He said, tomorrow we're going to have a fun day. So he took me for my favorite fried chicken. We were on a picnic. We took the kids with us and the dog and we fed the squirrels. And it was just like exactly what our family needed. And he just saw the need and met it. And then we had this beautiful reset. I was able to go the next day and do school and it was just awesome. And it's like, I don't even have to stay. I'm having a really hard time. I just wish you would take a day off and help me. I don't even have to say that anymore. It's just, he sees the need and he meets it. And he's excited to help me. And he knows. And it makes him so happy to see me happy.
Oh my gosh. He sounds like your hero.
Yes.
I love it. I love it. That is so exciting. And what about the passion in your marriage? That was kind of a sore spot early on.
Yeah, it's amazing because obviously there's medical things that happen that you have no control of and, certain things, but the intimacy is so much better now. It's like a million times better. So
great. Well, you're so accountable and I really admire how you just, even in this way you tell the story, you really are just taking responsibility for a lot of the ways that maybe you contributed to some of these breakdowns that you were experiencing. You didn't know at the time, but now that you do, you just sound so like remorseful and you know better and now you do better, which I admire very much. What do you think you'd tell somebody who is struggling like you were, feels like he's not attracted to her, there's no passion, and she feels like he's just distant all the time, and yeah, she's just feeling unattractive as a result of that, but she wants what you have now, where he just wants to spend time with her and takes the day off and sweeps her away for fried chicken picnics. And what should she do? What's your best tip for her?
I mean, honestly, just start with the skills. Everything is right there. And my dad growing up always used to tell me, you can't outgive God. And it's been true my whole life. I can't outgive God with my tithe, with my talents, my time. He always gives it back and multiplies it. And I'd say the same thing about your husband. You can't outgive your husband. And when it comes to the skills, if you're going to be stingy with the skills, you're going to see that. But if you live your life where you can't outgive your husband when it comes to the skills, especially the respect and the gratitude, you can't outgive it. It's always going to come back and be multiplied beyond your wildest dreams.
So you never have to worry about like feeling taken advantage of or any of that because it's always going to be multiplied and come back to you. Yeah, beautiful. And what do you think you'd say to Janelle if you could go back in time and tell her what you know now?
I feel sad sometimes thinking about everything that we went through. A lot of it was really tough. Those were dark days, even if you didn't include the marriage portion of it, just the stress. And, I had a lot of health problems that were also going on during that time. Those were dark days. I felt very low and just isolated and alone and so I'm sad, for those years that we lost. And I'm sad for not having the skills back then. I was struggling through a lot. I had a hard time trusting people. My mom had an affair for 8 years with her best friend's husband and my dad's best friend. So that really affected a lot for me, for trusting people, I never trusted my husband, even though he'd never given me a reason. Anytime, in those early years he left, I didn't trust him. And so looking back, I wish I would have had the skills, because when you have the skills, everything is just, you show up so much different. And, the Bible says, I will restore to you the years the locusts have eaten. And I feel like that's where I'm living now. With the skills, I'm now getting to live that dream life that I'd always dreamed about. When I first met him, I had this picture of what our life would be like. I knew the minute I saw him, it was love at first sight. And he thought the same about me, even though he saw me over a year before I saw him. He saw me and said, that's the girl. He had traveled the world and he said, that's the one for me. But I never saw him. So we had a class together and he was sitting in the back and I never knew he was back there. And then one day he got up to give a speech and I saw him and thought, he is it. That's the man I've dreamt about, that I couldn't put a face with. And so we met and it was just, we both knew. And so we just thought we'd have this amazing life, and everything would be as easy as it is when you first meet. And you would feel like a Disney princess forever. But I felt more like I had become, the stepsister who was really mean. So he wasn't treating me like a Disney princess, And so it's like all these years later, now I have this life that I saw the minute I met him. I dreamed of this life where we were still so in love. We'll be married 17 years in March. So to know now that I finally have that fairy tale that I always dreamed about, it's just so amazing. We celebrated my daughter's birthday last week. And it was just such a fun day. And, it's a bunch of little girls and I had the whole thing planned and all these fun games. And my husband he knows how I am, that I'm kind of more shy and reserved. So he just took charge of the day. And here he is with these little girls, helping them play pin the tail on the box and doing all of these things. And it was just this beautiful blue sky, gorgeous fall day. And I'm sitting there thinking, like, I love my life. I love my husband and these children and this life that God has blessed us with. And we get to do life together in such a beautiful way. Like, my husband is such a good man. He was always so loyal to me. And he took such good care of me, even after my son was born and I had a lot of problems. He was my nurse. I wasn't able some days to even walk. He would carry me to the bathroom, hold me up in the shower, hold me on the toilet. Like, he was always such a caring man. And that's the thing that drew me to him when I met him. Just so many little things. If he would drop me off at my door, it was an all-girls dorm. He wasn't allowed to come in. So he would take me right to the door and then he would rush back to his dorm and call me to make sure I made it up one flight of steps safely. And it's like, he's always been that way. And I changed. And all the time I would say, you've changed. And he would say, well, it must have been the job that changed me. And I don't think it was. I think it maybe a little bit, might make him more cynical to be in law enforcement. But now I know like it was me all along. It wasn't him. So now to just be able to live that, to make up for those years that I feel like we lost, those first 10 years. And now to be on this end, where things are just magic. Every day feels magical. I wake up and I can't wait to wake up and I don't have any drama in my life. We have so much fun together. And we'll joke about it. We'll say, don't you miss the days when we fought all the time and we didn't speak to each other? We'll joke about it because it's like, we can't even remember the last time that we had an argument. We don't argue. Everything is just bliss. And it seems so impossible when you are on this side of it that could ever be possible. And I think, as someone that would come into the skills thinking, how could this ever really work? It 100% works. My best friend, I told her all about it. And now she says, I feel like I could be on the podcast, because when you follow the skills, they work. And it's like magic.
That is so inspiring, Janel. Congratulations on what you've created. How is this affecting your kids?
It's so funny because it's just like life is just very tip for them. I homeschool them. We have a little rabbit tree, so we have our baby bunnies, and we have a tree house in the backyard, and our life is just this idyllic life. And it wouldn't be that way if I didn't learn the skills, because we wouldn't be you could have all the right ingredients for everything else. But if your marriage is crumbling and you're arguing and there's tension, the kids wouldn't be happy. So we just have this, we do everything together. We have so much fun as a family. And my kids are just, they love life with us. And we always joke that they'll probably never leave because they love to be with us so much. And I think it is because when they have parents who are so happy together and they have fun with their parents, because there's no strife. We're not bickering in the car. I'm not accusing him of driving too fast or, everything is so simple when you follow the skills. It takes the guesswork out and life is just smooth.
Wow. Well, congratulations. I'm really impressed with what you've created. It does sound idyllic. You do sound like a Disney princess. And I know that it takes actually a lot of courage and determination and focus to do that. So I want to present you with my Best Wife Award. Congratulations, Janel. You richly deserve this for creating a beautiful family and a harmonious, peaceful home life and a passionate, playful relationship with your husband. Well done.
Thank you.
And thank you for sharing your inspiring story and just describing how you did it, how you made your marriage last and thrive.
Thank you. I want to close. I just wanted to say a few weeks ago, he called me. He was on his way to work and he called and talked to me for a minute. And then after he hung up, he sent me this text with a link to a song. And so I listened to this song and I'm sitting there listening to it, laying in bed early in the morning with tears streaming down my face because it was just so sweet and thoughtful. And I remembered, laying there as I'm listening to the song, thinking about what life had been like before this. I felt like he didn't want to be with me. He didn't want to spend time with me. And now, he's sending me these beautiful lyrics. And these are the lyrics that he sent me. It says, I just woke up from a dream where you and I had to say goodbye. And I don't know what it all means, but since I survived, I realized wherever you go, that's where I'll follow. Nobody's promised tomorrow. So I'm going to love you every night like it's the last night. If the world was ending, I'd want to be next to you. If the party was over and our time on earth was through, I'd want to hold you for a while and die with a smile. If the world was ending, I'd want to be next to you. And I just sat there with tears streaming down my face because I just couldn't imagine how far we've come. And to now finally have this with him is so special. And I attribute it all to you and your skills that you've laid out because it's just amazing.
That is awesome, Janelle. Like, congratulations. That's what this is what you dreamed of when you were a little girl, right? This is the kind of romance you wanted to have. I think, all of us did. I know I did. And you are living it. And it's just wonderful. Well done. Well done. Thank you so much. For more on how to make your marriage shiny and amazing, get my free Adored Wife Roadmap at lauradoyle.org/roadmap. On next week's podcast, I'm going to share how to make your husband want you every day. And if you enjoyed the true story of how Janel made her struggling marriage playful and passionate again, subscribe to the Empowered Wife podcast. For more on how to make your marriage shiny and amazing, check out these videos.